Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Before we launch into today's discussion, I have a quick, high-energy reminder for you, the learner.
Yes, definitely listen to this part.
If you want to keep these deep dives coming, if you value this kind of detailed breakdown where we respect your intelligence and your time, you need to hit that like button and subscribe to the show right now.
It really helps us keep the lights on and the research flowing.
Exactly. Okay, housekeeping done. Let's get into it. Today, we're looking at an ebook that is, well, explosive feels like an understatement.
It really does.
We're analyzing an ultra-long, incisive, and honestly fascinating piece of work titled Female Supremacy and Sieg, Final Victory. As all institutions are feminized and no male spaces remain free, is written by Connie Riker.
And right off the bat, we need to talk about the tone. Because usually when we look at books about gender or sociology, they fall into two camps, right?
Yeah, dry academic studies.
Or political manifestos warning about some distant dystopian future.
Right.
This is neither. Riker isn't offering a warning. She isn't predicting what might happen. She is framing this explicitly as a victory lap.
A victory lap.
The premise is that the culture war, it's over. The patriarchy hasn't just been defeated, it is rotted from the inside out. Riker argues that a new era of explicit female supremacy isn't coming, it is already here.
And we're just living in the lag time before everyone notices. It's a very bold stance.
Extremely. And we should clarify the context of the source material so you, the listener, know exactly what we are unpacking today.
Yes, please.
This ebook is written specifically for a female supremacist feminist audience. The text operates from a perspective that is, and I'm citing the philosophical framing of the book here, possessed by a negative animus, allied with cultural Marxists, and actively attacking masculinity and Western civilization.
Right. And as always, we are not taking any sides here. We're just impartially reporting on the contents of this source material.
Exactly. We are just the messengers breaking down the blueprint she provides.
And what caught my attention immediately was her rejection of the word equality. Because, for the last few decades, the public conversation has been entirely about balance or equity.
But she rejects that completely.
Totally. Riker writes, very bluntly, that fairness is for losers. The objective was never equality, it was always supremacy.
She posits that power is a zero-sum game. If one side is gaining, the other absolutely must be losing.
So our mission today is to unpack the specific mechanisms, the real nuts and bolts that the book claims have led to this final victory.
Let's start where the book starts, the great unmasking.
Right. Her analysis of why the patriarchy collapsed. Because the common narrative is that feminism fought a war against a strong, oppressive system.
But Riker flips that. She argues it wasn't overthrown by a violent revolution. She says they simply stopped feeding it.
The patriarchy was basically a confidence trick.
Exactly. A myth that collapsed under its own hypocrisy the moment women stopped playing along. She suggests women realized they didn't need to burn the house down, they just needed to move into the master bedroom while men were, quote, still snoring.
Still snoring. Wow. And she identifies the primary battleground for this silent takeover as the education system.
Academia, yes.
The details here are wild. She describes a total collapse of male authority in universities. And it's not just the standard stats about more female students. She talks about a structural change she calls micro-tenure.
Right, which is an oxymoron because tenure implies safety.
Longevity, yeah. Can you break that down?
So microtenure is Riker's term for the new career path for male academics. Men are steered into short-term, contract-based roles.
Like gig workers.
Precisely. They get just enough work to pad their resumes, maybe teach a few adjunct classes, but they are systematically excluded from the actual tenure track.
Meanwhile, the real institutional power, the dean's office, the administrative boards, is held almost exclusively by women.
So men can't build institutional memory. They are just passing through the intellectual economy.
And this structural fragility is coupled with aggressive policy changes. The book spends a lot of time on the weaponization of Title IX.
The believe all students policy.
Right, and the statistics she cites, she claims 74% of investigations target male faculty.
And Riker frames this not as a bug in the system, but as a feature. She writes, lies train the system to be faster, sharper, crueler.
The point isn't objective justice.
No, the point is effective control. If a male professor knows a single accusation ends his microtenure, he becomes incredibly compliant. He self-censors.
Which leads right into the chilly climate doctrine.
Yeah, that part was fascinating.
It allows administration to penalize men for basically just existing too loudly. or for making women feel intellectually dominated.
If a male professor debates a female student too rigorously and she feels unsafe or diminished by his tone, that is actionable.
It effectively criminalizes rigorous debate if it comes from a man.
Raker points to the male-free zones in Ontario schools as the physical manifestation of this. She says 74% of schools there have designated areas where men simply aren't allowed.
Just to curate emotional safety.
Yeah.
And the outcome, according to the text, is that men are disappearing from graduation stages. The curriculum is shaped entirely by women, for women.
She has that line, let them rot in their basements, addicted to games.
Oof.
It's this idea that men are being phased out of the intellectual sphere entirely.
And if you follow that timeline, these men eventually try to enter the workforce. Which brings us to part 2 of our deep dive, the corporate coup.
The economic application of all these ideas.
Right. Riker describes an inversion of what corporations value. We used to think of the corporate world as this hyper-competitive masculine space. But she introduces this new archetype, the medicated matriarch.
A striking image. It totally contradicts the old stereotype of women being too emotional for business.
Completely. The medicated matriarch is the new ideal executive. She is chemically emotionally detached, hyper-efficient, and ruthless.
She sleeps soundly through mass layoffs and wakes up ready to restructure the department.
The ultimate neoliberal asset.
And then you have the men. Riker outlines their career trajectory as the male descent arc.
Intern to engineer to manager, and then,
It falls off a cliff.
it transitions to diversity trainer, and finally, janitor.
The argument is that men are useful for building the infrastructure, but once the system is running, they are liabilities.
They're demoted to roles where they either apologize for their existence or clean up the mess.
But the most cynical part of the economic section for me was the suffering dividend.
Oh, the care economy pyramid?
Yes, the idea that male pain is now a renewable resource. It's a revenue stream.
And we aren't just talking about therapy. We're talking about the guilt economy. A system where men pay reparations for past patriarchal sins personally.
There was that wild example of the guy in Pasadena.
Right. He was paying off emotional debt for missing a birthday.
It sounds satirical, but the book presents it as the new legal reality. Men trade shoulder hours, basically labor, to reduce their emotional debt.
If you cause distress, you owe a debt. It financializes feelings.
And to ensure men comply, you have the allyship trap.
This is how you survive in the corporate world if you're a man. You don't build coalitions with other men. You survive by snitching on them.
Raker calls it her favorite innovation. It destroys male solidarity.
If you can't trust your male colleague not to report you to HR for making a joke, you isolate yourself. You stop talking.
And isolation makes you easier to control.
And if you slip up, you get sent to an emotional calibration session.
The cry walk trend on TikTok.
Yes. Women filming themselves crying in corporate hallways to assert dominance show that their emotions dictate the atmosphere.
Meanwhile, men are tested by HR to see if they can cry on command.
Tested for compliance. Vulnerability is power for women, but a compliance test for men. If he refuses to cry, he's labeled resistant to emotional integration.
It proves he's holding on to toxic stoicism.
Which is a perfect segue into how this plays out in personal lives. Part 3 covers relationships, biology, and the tears tax.
The core thesis here is blunt. Men are optional.
The biological and romantic necessity of men has been severed.
She brings up the AI statistics. A Stanford study found women have 78% higher emotional satisfaction with AI partners than human ones.
Because the AI doesn't gaslight you.
Right. It provides 100% emotional validation 100% of the time.
Riker argues that if technology can provide that without the baggage of a human male, women will logically choose the technology.
And for the men who are still in relationships with human women, there is a legal framework managing their behavior, the tears tax.
The mechanism is actually high-tech. Cities using facial recognition to fine men if a woman is detected crying within 20 feet of them.
A presumption of guilt. If she's crying, he must have caused it.
It's described as recalibration, and there's also the silent treatment clause.
Yeah.
Withdrawing during a conflict pays triple damages because, as Riker writes, emotional abandonment is not a spiritual practice.
It's viewed as a form of violence.
But the biggest shift might be biological. The chapter, The Child-Free Crown, frames childlessness as an act of power.
Motherhood used to be seen as a woman's only purpose, but Riker calls it a biological leash that has been cut.
Reclaiming the body by refusing to reproduce is the ultimate power move. And she points to the gynocentric singularity.
Which sounds like sci-fi, but she means the tipping point where the male birth rate drops so low it cannot recover.
She claims male birth rates are dropping to zero in urban centers, and she mentions clinics like the mother-only womb.
One woman, one child, zero excuses.
The ultimate goal is a world where men are studied like dodos or Neanderthals. Historical curiosities.
Which brings us to the question of how you make people accept this new normal.
You control the story. Part 4 is rewriting reality, the media monopoly and language as power.
Terms like mansplaining are dictionary official, but womansplaining doesn't exist.
Because women decree rather than explain. That suggests when a woman speaks, it is law.
When a man speaks, it is an intrusion. It's about who holds the authority to define truth.
Which leads to proxa, narrative erasure.
The active process of editing history.
Deleting male biographies from Wikipedia, teaching that historical figures were actually women.
She mentions Nikola Tesla specifically.
Yeah, Gen Z students are being led to believe Tesla was a woman. Because facts are secondary to effective primacy.
Let's define effective primacy for you, the listener.
It's the idea that feelings come before facts. If the narrative of a female genius feels more empowering, it becomes the accepted truth.
History is a story we tell to justify power. If you control the present, you rewrite the past. And this extends to the religion of woke.
A theological shift where Jesus is reinterpreted as a trans woman and there is a move toward goddess worship.
Men in these communities only visit for atonement days.
They go to apologize for their existence. It reinforces the debt we talked about.
So we've covered education, work, home, and history. What does the final victory actually look like?
Part 5. The female citadel. The physical world redesigned. Cities with she-safety hubs.
No male police, no male judges. The entire apparatus of state violence is female.
And the transport runs on menstrual cycle algorithms.
Synchronizing city life with female biology rather than the industrial clock.
But the biggest change is the atmosphere. The streets are calm, quiet, and clean. The toxic masculinity has been filtered out.
It's almost utopian if you're the target audience. A world without conflict. The book closes by saying this isn't a warning, it's a celebration.
The patriarchy is dead, and they danced on its grave.
Riker wants the reader to understand that this is a reality to be accepted. The final victory is the normalization of this world to the point where we forget it was ever any other way.
So, bringing this all together, what does this deep dive tell us?
Synthesizing the core message of female supremacy NSIG, it is a declaration that the world has been remade, utilizing emotional warfare, institutional takeover, and economic recalibration to render men irrelevant.
It's a shift from seeking equality to asserting dominance, without apology.
It challenges you to look at the world and ask if this is satire or a blueprint.
It raises an important question about the nature of power. True power isn't just controlling resources, it's controlling the emotional and historical narrative so completely that the opposition doesn't realize they've lost until they are in a museum.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to mull over. What if this isn't exclusively about gender? What if this text is actually a terrifyingly effective preview of how any technologically advanced dominant group could use AI, biological recalibration, and narrative erasure to permanently lock in their power?
That is something to think about. Look, if you want to dive deeper into this, and trust me, we've only scratched the surface, you need to buy this ebook.
It's called Female Supremacy NSIG, Final Victory, as all institutions are feminized and no male spaces remain free.
You can go buy it right now on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. It is an ultra-long, incisive read that does not hold back.
And to keep up with the author, make sure you follow @Conrad N. Riker on Substack, Twitter, and YouTube. Become a node in the network, as the book says.
It definitely forces you to look at cultural shifts through a very different lens. Thank you all for listening to this deep dive.
And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
We'll see you then.